I overheard my wife call me a stranger in my own house, so I became exactly that, and let them discover what losing me truly cost forever changed. Lie. I found out the hard way when I overheard my wife telling her daughter that I was nothing more than a stranger in my own house. Let me tell you exactly how that conversation changed everything. It was a regular Wednesday evening. I had just gotten home from work and was heading to the kitchen when I heard voices coming from the living room. My wife was talking to her 22-year-old daughter, who was visiting for the week. I was about to announce myself when I heard my name mentioned. Something in their tone made me stop and listen. "Mom, why do you let him act like he owns this place?" her daughter asked with obvious irritation. "Honey, he doesn't own anything here. This has always been our house, our space. He's just a stranger who happens to live here now," my wife replied with a casual dismissiveness that hit me like a sledgehammer. I stood there frozen, a stranger in the house I had been paying the mortgage on for the past 8 years. "I mean, I get it," her daughter continued, "but he acts like he belongs here, making decisions, rearranging things, acting like some kind of authority figure. It's weird, Mom." My wife laughed, actually laughed. "Trust me, I know exactly how you feel. Sometimes I look at him and think, who is this person in my space? He tries so hard to fit in, but he will always be an outsider to us. This is our family, not his." The words cut deeper than any knife could. 8 years of marriage, 8 years of building what I thought was our life together, and I was still just an outsider. I had raised her daughter since she was 14, paid for her college, walked her through breakups, celebrated her achievements. I thought I was her stepfather. Apparently, I was just some guy who happened to be married to her mother. "Remember when he tried to ground me for coming home late that one time?" her daughter said, giggling. "Like, who does he think he is? My dad? Oh God, that was so awkward." My wife responded, "I had to explain to him later that he doesn't get to parent you. That's not his place. He's not your father and he never will be." I felt my hands clench into fists. All those years of trying to be a good stepfather, all those moments when I thought we were building something real, and she had been undermining me behind my back. Every time I tried to be a parent, she had been telling her daughter that I had no right, no place, no authority in this family. "So, what's the plan?" her daughter asked. "Are you going to stay married to him forever?" There was a pause and I held my breath, waiting for the answer. "For now, yes. He's useful, you know. He pays the bills, maintains the house, takes care of things. But emotionally, he's just there, like furniture. Expensive furniture that pays for itself." That was it. That was the moment everything crystallized for me. I wasn't a husband in this marriage. I wasn't a stepfather to her daughter. I was a walking automated teller machine with benefits, a convenient stranger who happened to contribute to their lifestyle while being systematically excluded from their actual family unit. I quietly walked back to the front door, opened it, and closed it loudly enough for them to hear. "I'm home," I called out, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. "Hi, honey," my wife called back, her voice suddenly warm and welcoming. "How was your day?" The audacity was breathtaking. 30 seconds ago I was furniture, now I was honey. I walked into the living room where they were both sitting, looking at me with fake smiles. Her daughter gave me a little wave, the same person who had just been complaining about my presence in what she considered her mother's house. "Hey there," I said, looking directly at her daughter. "How's the visit going? Feeling comfortable in your space?" Something in my tone must have registered because her daughter's smile faltered slightly. Yeah, it's good." "Good," I replied, then looked at my wife. "I'm going to grab a beer. Any of you strangers want anything?" The word hung in the air like a challenge. My wife's eyes narrowed slightly, but she couldn't call me out on it without revealing what I had overheard. "No, we're fine," she said carefully. I nodded and walked to the kitchen, my mind racing. 8 years of being treated like an outsider while playing the role of provider and caretaker. 8 years of being told I was family while being reminded that I wasn't. 8 years of investing in people who saw me as nothing more than a convenient stranger. Well, if that's what they wanted, that's exactly what they were going to get. As I opened that beer and took the first sip, I made a decision that would change everything. They wanted a stranger. They were about to discover what it really meant to have a stranger in their house, and they weren't going to like it one bit. The conversation I had overheard had just cost them the most generous, caring stranger they had ever met. From now on, they would be dealing with someone entirely different. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling while my wife slept peacefully beside me, and for the first time in 8 years I started connecting the dots I had been ignoring. The signs had been there all along. I had just been too invested in the fantasy of being a family man to see them clearly. Like how every major decision about the house was made without me. When they redecorated the living room, I came home to find new furniture and was told it was already decided. When her daughter wanted to paint her room, they picked colors and bought supplies without asking my opinion. My input was never requested, never valued, never considered necessary. I remembered the family photos on the mantle. 8 years of marriage and how many pictures included me. Maybe 3 or 4, and only because I had specifically asked to be included. The rest were just the two of them, mother and daughter. Like I was the photographer, not part of the family. Then there were the holidays. Every Christmas, every birthday, every celebration was planned around what they wanted. I was expected to provide, to pay, to facilitate, but never to actually participate in the planning. I was the funding, not the family. The vacation to Colorado 2 years ago really made sense now. They planned the entire trip, booked everything, decided on activities, and then informed me about it. When I suggested we try that new restaurant everyone was talking about, they exchanged a look and said they had already made reservations somewhere else. I thought they were just being decisive. Now I realized they were excluding me from decisions in my own vacation. Even the everyday stuff was starting to click. How they would have conversations that would suddenly stop when I walked into the room, how they would make plans together and then casually mention them to me later like I was being briefed rather than consulted. How they would share inside jokes that I was never part of. Memories that somehow never included me, even when I was physically present. I thought about all the times I tried to discipline her daughter, only to have my wife quietly reverse my decisions later. Every boundary I tried to set was undermined. Every rule I attempted to establish was overturned. I wasn't being respected as a stepfather because I was never acknowledged as one in the first place. The more I thought about it, the more obvious it became. I wasn't excluded by accident. This was systematic, deliberate, intentional. They had spent 8 years keeping me at arm's length while taking everything I offered. My wife stood next to me and I felt a surge of anger. She had been playing house with me for 8 years, accepting my money, my efforts, my commitment, while secretly viewing me as an unwelcome intruder. The level of deception was staggering. I had remodeled the kitchen because she said she wanted it updated. I had paid for her daughter's college because I thought that's what stepfathers did. I bought a bigger house because they said they needed more space. I had even changed jobs to one that paid better so I could provide more for what I thought was our family. Every sacrifice I had made, every effort I had put in, every dollar I had spent was for people who saw me as nothing more than a useful stranger. I had been financially and emotionally invested in a family that had never considered me a member. The next morning I watched them interact over breakfast. The easy intimacy, the shared glances, the way they communicated without words. I was sitting at the same table, but I might as well have been invisible. They were a unit, and I was just there. "So, what's the plan for today?" I asked, genuinely curious to see how they would handle, including me. They exchanged that look again, the one I had seen 1,000 times, but never really understood until now. "Oh, we're going to go shopping for some things for the apartment," her daughter said casually. "Mom's going to help me pick out some new decorations." "Sounds fun," I said, waiting for the invitation that I knew wouldn't come. "Yeah, it should be," my wife replied, not even bothering to pretend I was welcome to join them. I nodded, taking another sip of coffee. "Well, have a good time. I'll be here doing stranger things." My wife's head snapped up at that, her eyes searching my face, but I just smiled and went back to my coffee. After they left, I sat alone in the house I had been paying for, surrounded by furniture I'd had no say in choosing, looking at family photos that barely included me. The silence was deafening, but it was also revealing. This was my reality. This had always been my reality. I had just been too blind to see it. I pulled out my phone and started making some calls. If I was going to be a stranger in this house, I was going to be a very different kind of stranger than the one they had been taking advantage of. The first call was to my accountant. I needed to understand exactly how much money I had been pouring into this house, this family, this illusion over the past 8 years. The number was going to be eye-opening, I was sure. The second call was to my lawyer, not for divorce papers, not yet. I had something much more interesting in mind. By the time they came home from their shopping trip, laughing and carrying bags, I was ready to begin my transformation. They wanted a stranger. They were about to meet one. The transformation started Monday morning. I woke up, got dressed, and made myself breakfast for one. When my wife came downstairs expecting her usual coffee and toast, she found me finishing my meal and cleaning only my dishes. "Where's my coffee?" she asked, confused. "I don't know," I replied, rinsing my cup. "Where do you usually get coffee?" She stared at me like I had grown a second head. You always make coffee for both of us. That was before, I said, grabbing my keys. I'm just a stranger here, remember? Strangers don't make coffee for other people's families. I left her standing there, mouth open, trying to process what had just happened. That evening, I came home to find both of them waiting for me with obvious frustration. The house was exactly as I had left it that morning, which meant neither of them had done the dishes, taken out the trash, or started dinner. We need to talk, my wife announced. Do we? I asked, genuinely curious. About what? About your attitude lately. You've been acting strange. I almost laughed at the irony. Strange? I thought I was always strange to you. I'm just finally acting like it. Her daughter jumped in. This is ridiculous. You can't just stop doing things around here. Why not? I asked, looking directly at her. This isn't my house. According to you, these aren't my responsibilities. I'm just a stranger who lives here, right? The color drained from her face. She knew I had heard their conversation. Look, my wife said, trying to regain control. I don't know what you think you heard, but I heard exactly what I was supposed to hear, I interrupted. 8 years of clarity in one conversation. So I've decided to give you exactly what you wanted. A stranger. I walked to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. By the way, I'm not cooking dinner tonight. Strangers don't cook for other people's families. Order pizza or something. The next few days were beautiful to watch. They kept expecting me to crack, to go back to my old patterns, to resume being their personal assistant and automated teller machine, but I held firm. When the lawn needed mowing, I mowed exactly the path from my car to the front door. The rest stayed long. When they complained, I shrugged and said, strangers don't do yard work for free. When my wife's car needed gas, she waited for me to fill it up like always. Instead, I filled my tank and left hers empty. Your car? Your gas? I explained when she confronted me. The breaking point came when her daughter asked me to help her move some furniture in her room. I looked at her for a long moment, then said, I don't do manual labor for people who don't consider me family. Call a moving company. You can't be serious, she said. Dead serious. You wanted me to be a stranger, so I'm being one. Strangers charge for their services. That night, my wife tried a different approach. She sat down next to me on the couch and put her hand on my arm. Honey, I think we need to discuss this like adults. We're not adults together, I said, gently removing her hand. We're strangers. Strangers don't have intimate conversations about feelings. This is insane, she said, her voice rising. You're acting like a child. I'm acting like exactly what you told your daughter I was. Nothing more, nothing less. I stood up and headed toward the stairs. By the way, I'm implementing a new policy. Since I'm just a stranger living here, I'll be paying rent like a stranger would. I calculated it based on square footage. I'm using the master bedroom and 1 bathroom, which comes to about $600 a month. That's what I'll be contributing to household expenses from now on. She stood up quickly. $600? Are you insane? The mortgage alone is not my problem, I interrupted. I'm a stranger, remember? Strangers don't pay other people's mortgages. They pay rent for the space they use. If you want more money, you'll need to find another stranger to help with your bills. I paused at the bottom of the stairs. Oh, and I'm also going to start charging for services. Yard work is $50 per session. Car maintenance is $30 per hour. Handyman services are $40 per hour. Moving furniture is $60 per hour. I accept cash or check. The look on her face was priceless. She had never considered that turning me into a stranger might mean I would start acting like one in every aspect of our relationship. You can't do this, she said weakly. Watch me, I replied. You wanted a stranger in your house. Congratulations, you've got one. I went upstairs and closed the bedroom door behind me. For the first time in 8 years, I felt like I was in control of my own life. From downstairs, I could hear them having an animated conversation, their voices rising and falling in panic. They were finally realizing what they had lost. The generous, caring, devoted husband and stepfather was gone. In his place was exactly what they had always seen me as, a stranger. The difference was this stranger knew his worth and wasn't going to give it away for free anymore. By Thursday, they had realized I wasn't bluffing. The house was falling apart without my constant maintenance. They were eating takeout every night because neither of them could cook, and the bills were piling up because I had only paid my $600 rent portion. My wife cornered me in the kitchen that morning while I was making myself breakfast. This has gone too far, she said, waving a handful of bills. The electric company called yesterday. The credit card is maxed out. The lawn looks like a jungle. You can't just abandon your responsibilities. I looked up from my eggs, genuinely amused. My responsibilities to who? I'm a stranger here, remember? These aren't my responsibilities. Don't be ridiculous. You live here, you benefit from these things. I benefit from electricity in my room. So, I calculated my usage and left that money on the counter yesterday. Did you not see it? $43.50. Very fair for a stranger's electrical usage. She stared at the 220s and handful of change I had left by the coffee maker. $43? The electric bill is $320. Then you better figure out how to pay the other $276.50, I said, flipping my eggs, or find some other strangers to help split it. Her daughter walked in at that moment, looking frustrated. Mom, my car is making that noise again. Can he look at it? He doesn't do that anymore, my wife said through gritted teeth. Actually, I do, I corrected. $440 an hour with a 2-hour minimum. Cash up front. Her daughter scoffed. $80? That's insane, you used to do it for free. That was when I was family, I explained patiently. Now I'm a stranger and strangers charge for automotive services. You can take it to a shop if you prefer. I'm sure they'll charge more than $80. This is ridiculous, she said, storming out. My wife watched her go, then turned back to me. You're destroying this family. What family? I asked, meeting her eyes. You made it very clear that I'm not part of any family here. I'm just acting accordingly. That afternoon, things escalated. I came home to find my wife had called her sister over for moral support. They were both waiting for me in the living room like some kind of intervention committee. We need to talk, her sister announced. Do we? I asked, setting down my keys. Are you part of this family too, or are you another stranger? Don't be smart with me, she snapped. What you're doing to them is cruel. What am I doing exactly? I asked, genuinely curious. You're withholding support from your wife and stepdaughter. Stepdaughter? I repeated, looking at my wife. That's interesting. Yesterday she told me I wasn't her father and never would be. Today she's my stepdaughter. Which is it? My wife's sister looked confused. What are you talking about? Ask your sister, I said. Ask her to explain what I am to this family. Ask her to define my role here. There was an uncomfortable silence. My wife couldn't answer without exposing her own hypocrisy. Look, her sister finally said, whatever problems you two are having, taking it out on them financially is wrong. I'm not taking anything out on anyone, I replied calmly. I'm simply behaving like what I've always been told I am, a stranger. Strangers don't provide financial support to other people's families. But you're married to her. Am I? I asked, looking directly at my wife. Because marriage implies partnership, mutual respect, shared decision-making. I haven't experienced any of those things here. I've experienced being tolerated, excluded, and used. That's not marriage. That's more like employment. I paused, letting that sink in. And since I'm apparently just an employee here, I've decided to renegotiate my terms of employment. My wife's face was turning red. You can't treat us like strangers. Watch me, I said simply. You taught me how. That evening, her daughter approached me while I was reading in the living room. She was clearly desperate. Look, I need you to drive me to work tomorrow. My car is still making that noise. Sure, I said without looking up from my book. That will be $20 each way, $40 total. $20 each way? It's 15 minutes. Stranger taxi rates, I explained. Plus, I have to use my gas and my time. Time is money. This is insane. You used to drive me places all the time. That was when I thought I was your stepfather, I said, finally looking at her. But you made it clear that I'm not your father and never will be. So now I'm just a stranger with a car, and strangers charge for rides. She stood there for a moment, probably realizing for the first time what she had lost. All those years of free rides, free help, free support from someone she had never even acknowledged as family. Fine, she said finally. I'll ask Mom. Good luck with that, I replied, going back to my book. Last I checked, her car was making strange noises too. The next morning, I watched from the window as both of them tried to figure out their transportation situation. My wife's car barely started, and her daughter was calling friends trying to find rides. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. As I passed them in the driveway, I rolled down my window. Need any stranger taxi services? I asked with a smile. Today's special is $45 to anywhere in town. The look of pure frustration on their faces was worth every penny they had refused to pay. I drove off to work, leaving them to figure out their own problems. After all, that's what strangers do. They mind their own business. Friday night was when everything came to a head. My wife had invited her parents over for dinner, probably hoping their presence would force me back into my old role. She had spent the afternoon cooking and cleaning, trying to make everything look normal. When her parents arrived, I greeted them politely at the door like any good stranger would. "How are you doing?" her father asked, shaking my hand. "Oh, I'm doing great," I replied cheerfully. "Just enjoying my stay here." He looked confused. "Your stay?" "Yeah, I'm renting a room from your daughter. Nice arrangement. Very affordable." My wife shot me a warning look, but I ignored it. Her parents exchanged glances. During dinner, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. I ate my meal quietly while they made small talk about family plans and upcoming events that naturally didn't include me. "So, what are you two planning for your anniversary next month?" her mother asked innocently. "Anniversary?" I repeated, looking genuinely puzzled. "Oh, you mean the anniversary of when I started renting the room here? That would be 8 years, yes. Time flies when you're just a stranger in someone else's house." The silence was deafening. Her parents looked completely bewildered. "What's he talking about?" her father asked my wife. Before she could answer, I decided to clarify things. "Well, I overheard an interesting conversation earlier this week. Your daughter was explaining to her daughter that I'm just a stranger who happens to live here, that this has always been their house, their space, and I'm just an outsider who's never really belonged to this family." Her mother's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. She said, "What?" "Oh, it gets better," I continued, warming to my subject. "Apparently I'm like expensive furniture that pays for itself. Useful, but not actually family. Just some guy who's been contributing to their lifestyle while being systematically excluded from every important decision or family moment." My wife's face had gone completely white. "That's not... You're taking it out of context." "Am I?" I asked, turning to her parents. "Did you know that in 8 years of marriage, I've never been consulted on a single major decision about this house? That family photos are taken deliberately without me? That I'm undermined every time I try to act like a stepfather because I'm told that's not my place?" Her father set down his silverware. "Is this true?" My wife was scrambling. "Dad, it's complicated. He doesn't understand." "I understand perfectly," I interrupted. "I understand that I've spent 8 years investing emotionally and financially in people who see me as nothing more than a convenient stranger. I understand that every sacrifice I made, every effort I put in, was for a family that never actually accepted me as a member." I stood up from the table. "So, I decided to give them exactly what they wanted, a stranger. No more free rides. No more unpaid services. No more emotional investment in people who've made it clear I don't belong here." Her daughter, who had been silent throughout this exchange, finally spoke up. "That's not fair. You're being dramatic." "Dramatic?" I laughed. "You literally complained to your mother about me acting like I have authority in this house. You said it was weird that I thought I belonged here. You were right. It was weird of me to think I belonged in a family that never wanted me." I looked around the table at all their shocked faces. "The beautiful thing is this arrangement works perfectly for everyone. They get to keep their little family unit intact without the annoying stranger trying to insert himself where he doesn't belong. And I get to stop pretending I'm something I was never allowed to be." Her mother found her voice. "But you're married to her." "Am I?" I asked. "Because marriage implies partnership. This has been more like an employment arrangement where I provided services in exchange for being tolerated in their space. Well, I've renegotiated my terms of employment." I picked up my plate and started walking toward the kitchen. "I'll let you all enjoy your family dinner. I'm just a stranger here after all. Strangers don't intrude on family time." As I loaded my dishes into the dishwasher, I could hear the heated conversation starting in the dining room. Her parents were asking hard questions, and my wife was struggling to explain her way out of the hole she had dug. An hour later, after her parents had left in obvious disappointment, my wife came to find me in the living room. "Are you satisfied now?" she asked, her voice shaking with anger and embarrassment. "Actually, yes," I replied honestly. "For the first time in 8 years, everyone knows exactly where I stand in this family. No more pretending, no more false expectations, no more confusion about my role here." "You humiliated me in front of my parents." "I told them the truth," I corrected. "You humiliated yourself by treating your husband like an unwelcome stranger for 8 years. I just stopped pretending it wasn't happening." She sat down across from me, and for a moment I thought she might actually apologize, might acknowledge what she had done. Instead, she said, "What's it going to take to fix this?" "Fix what?" I asked. "There's nothing to fix. This is exactly what you wanted. You have your house, your space, your family unit, and a stranger who pays rent and minds his own business. Perfect arrangement." "That's not what I want." "Then you should have thought about that before you decided I was just expensive furniture." I stood up and headed for the stairs. "The stranger is going to bed now. Try not to make too much noise down here. As I reached the top of the stairs, I heard her daughter ask, "Mom, what are we going to do?" "I don't know," my wife replied. And for the first time since this started, she sounded truly defeated. Good. It was about time they realized what they had actually lost. Monday morning brought the final confrontation. I was making my usual breakfast for one when my wife and her daughter both came downstairs, clearly having coordinated their approach. "We've been talking," my wife announced, "and we want to apologize. I didn't look up from my eggs." "For what specifically?" "For making you feel excluded," her daughter said carefully. "Feel excluded?" I repeated. "I wasn't feeling excluded, I was being excluded. There's a difference." My wife stepped closer. "Look, we realize we made mistakes. We want to work this out." "Work what out?" I asked, finally turning to face them. "You told me exactly what I am to this family, a stranger. I accepted that truth and started acting accordingly. What's there to work out?" "We want you to be part of the family," her daughter said, though her tone suggested she was reading from a script. I laughed. 8 years too late for that conversation. You had 8 years to make me feel like family. Instead, you spent 8 years making sure I knew I wasn't. My wife was getting desperate. "What do you want from us?" "Nothing," I said simply. "I want absolutely nothing from either of you. You've taught me that wanting to be part of your family was a mistake. Lesson learned." I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. The beauty of being a stranger is that strangers have no expectations. They don't get disappointed because they don't invest emotionally. It's actually quite liberating. That evening, I came home to find moving boxes in the living room. My wife was packing pictures and personal items. "Going somewhere?" I asked. "We're moving in with my sister for a while," she said without looking at me. "Since you want to be strangers, we'll give you the space you want." "Interesting," I replied. "And the house? It's yours. The mortgage, the bills, all of it. You win." I sat down on the couch, amused by her attempt at manipulation. "Actually, this is perfect. I was getting tired of having roommates anyway." Her face fell. She had expected me to panic, to beg them to stay, to promise to change back. "You don't mean that," she said. "I absolutely mean it. Strangers moving out is exactly what strangers do when they don't like the living arrangements." Her daughter appeared in the doorway. "So that's it? 8 years and you're just going to let us leave like you?" I stood up and walked over to them. "You're both adults. You can live wherever you want. I'm not your keeper." I paused at the doorway, "But let me give you both some free advice as you start your new lives. The next time you find a man willing to invest 8 years of his life, his money, and his heart into your family, maybe try treating him like family instead of expensive furniture." I headed upstairs, then called back down. "Oh, and don't forget to return the house keys. Strangers don't get to keep keys when they move out." The next morning, they were gone. The house was quiet, peaceful, and finally mine. No more exclusion, no more undermining, no more pretending to be grateful for scraps of acknowledgement. I made coffee for one, read the newspaper in peace, and planned my day without having to consider anyone else's feelings or opinions. 2 weeks later, my wife called. "The kids miss you," she said, though her daughter had made it clear she had never considered me family. "Which kids?" I asked. "I don't have any kids. Don't be like this. We made a mistake." "You made a choice," I corrected. "You chose to treat me like a stranger for 8 years. I just finally accepted that choice and acted accordingly. So what now? Now you live with the consequences of your choices. You wanted a stranger. You got one. You wanted me out of your family space. Mission accomplished." I hung up and went back to my newspaper. Sometimes people don't realize what they have until it's gone. But sometimes by the time they realize it, the person they lost has realized they're better off without them. I never did hear from them again, and honestly, that was perfectly fine with me. The house stayed quiet, peaceful, and mine, just the way a stranger likes it.